Welcome to Breaking Biscuits, the experience. Today we've got part 2, why men struggle with vulnerability, and we're going to take a deep dive into anger. I can't wait to talk about this. Mark, we're here today, part 2, why men struggle with vulnerability, but we really want to take a deep dive into anger. We talked a little bit about men and anger, and maybe one of the comments we made last week was anger is usually rooted in one of 3 things for men, which is hurt, shame, or fear. So in today's podcast, we kind of want to do a deep dive into these 3 areas. And I know you and I have had many conversations about anger being rooted in shame. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's a good place to start. And one thing I just want to mention, shame in men, it's an emotion that typically men are very intolerable to. Like, men are incredibly uncomfortable with feelings of shame. It threatens their ego, their self-worth, their very essence of their manhood. So when men live in shame, it's not unusual for them to act out in anger. And anger is obviously the secondary emotion in this whole subject that we're talking about, is how do we get to that primary emotion, meaning what's under the surface, what's driving the anger. And in many times it's rooted in shame.
Yeah, well, let's set the pace. As you know, Dr. Brene Brown has been a real influential pace setter for shame. She's a shame researcher, but she said the only way you can describe it is guilt. Guilt and shame are different. Guilt says, I screwed up. Shame says, I am a screw up. And so when people are trapped in that shame cycle, I think that's what we need to talk about today, is this shame cycle that keeps reoccurring and reinforcing that something's wrong with us. Mm-hmm. Like, what is wrong with me? I wonder how many men out there, Toby, and we're talking in relation to anger, like, manifest the anger, and then, and after that big blow up, they get into their space in their head, and I could only imagine that their self-talk is, what is wrong with me? And that's the shame talking. Shame says something's wrong with you. And I think that's important.
No, absolutely. But it's that shame thinking that something is wrong with you that causes the shame cycle. Because if you think something is wrong with you and you don't deal with those underlying emotions, then you're just teeing the ball up for the next round of an outburst of anger. And that's why we call it the shame cycle. It just feeds on itself over and over and over. It's a trap. That's why it's so important to really get down to the root of what's really going on the inside of you.
In our culture, we have, we talked last week, men have a license, or we see men angry and we call that passion. But I think men in general say, I'm angry. And what I've learned in my working with people all my life, what I've learned is people will justify their bad behavior and say, that's just who I am.
Right.
So that's a refusal to go any deeper. That's a refusal to look at the people they hurt. It's a refusal to, be at that person there is going to be hard to find 6 people to carry their casket. I'll just tell you right now.
Right.
If you live your life of, well, that's just who I am. I hear it all. I've heard it my whole life.
Yeah, and it might be who's familiar to them,
Hmm.
but it's not really who they are, because I feel like anger rooted in shame almost always stems from like some type of failure, rejection. You know, men that have bad relationships or no relationship with their father typically carry a lot of anger,
Hmm.
and it's because they lack the identity, that they have a feeling of being rejected or inadequate. You know, I wasn't good enough that my father even stuck around, or I wasn't good enough that my father would come see me. You know, he abandoned me.
Hmm.
And so that creates shame, and then the shame creates anger, because the shame is it's a horrible feeling, because like you said, it's a dialogue. It says something's wrong with me, even though the fatherless, they were a kid and they didn't have any control over what their father did or said or was present or not present. But at the end of the day, as a child, you think something is wrong with you, and then you grow up thinking something is wrong with you. And anytime you feel that connection or that vulnerability get questioned, um, shame kicks in, and the next thing you know, yeah, you're pushing back on the people you love.
And you, it's inevitable now in my old age. I realize you become like the person you hate, and you promise yourself you'd never be.
Yeah,
100%. You know, I've seen it time and time and time again, because trauma not transformed will be transferred. And I was talking to my wife this morning at coffee, and I realized it's really unfair, Toby. People weren't born this way. And honestly, most people, you know, I can't tell you how many people who were, I don't know, molested or abused as a child, and they grew up, they didn't ask for that. They were just born into a bad situation and experienced it. So it's either, you know, anger's either happened to you or it was modeled to you.
yeah.
Um, so
You
I,
you go ahead.
I just, I want to just dive right in here. I want to ask you a question. But why do people get angry and lash out against the people that they love? What, do they not think that that's going to have repercussions? Or talk to
Well,
me about that.
yeah, I think it's a great question, and it just tells you, when I hear you ask that question, it kind of reveals to me the depth of what's really going on here. Because these are not like easy one sentence answers, and do these three things and life is better, and rah rah rah, motivational speech here. This is real talk. I
Mhm.
mean, we're talking heart level stuff.
Mhm.
And when you talk about why do we lash out for the people we love, and I thought of a scripture in Romans chapter 7, when Paul, and I'm not going to like quote it, but I'll kind of tell you how I read it, and then you and I kind of started something several years ago, and how we interpret a certain word in the Bible, and we can
Yeah.
dig into that. But when you said that, I thought about Romans chapter 7, and Paul kind of basically talked about this conflict that he had within himself. And he's like, the things I'm supposed to do, it seems like I don't do them. And the things that I shouldn't do, I do. And he asked himself, and he's obviously talking about the law and grace and all that as well. And one of the comments he said before that, he said, should I sin to let grace abound? Of course, the answer is no. But when he was talking about that war inside of himself, he said that, I think it's something like, it's no longer I that it's no longer I that does it, but the sin that's in me.
Mhm.
And one of the things we started doing when we read the Bible, just to get a better understanding of how people view sin, is we substitute the word sin with shame. Because people can relate to shame better than they can to sin.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you think about it and you think it's no longer I that doeth, but the shame that's in me, it's like a light bulb moment. It's like, of course, everybody that's ever been in this shame cycle, I've been in a shame cycle before. You say, I'll never do it again. God, I'll never do it again. But it's the shame in you. If you don't deal with the shame, guess what? You're going to do it again, because the cycle is there's something wrong with me. And if I believe there's something wrong with me, then I'm going to act out in the form that I go to make myself feel better for a short period of time. And then shame kicks in again, because I feel horrible about what I did. In this case, we're talking about anger. So I feel horrible, about what I did. And we never get to why is the shame in us? What is it that's in us? Right? What is it that's driving the shame?
Yeah, that's the most important thing we don't ask. We just try to deal with oh my God, I just got angry at the person I love and I don't even know why. You can justify it. But to me, it goes like this. I get angry towards the people I love. But you and I were talking, it's like, but then you try to overcompensate and do good to try to erase the bad that you just did. But
right.
If you get angry at your family and wife, it's a 3. But you'll never do enough good to get past a 2. So you go in the hole every single time.
Right.
And I want to read the scripture that you just said, because I'm a scripture guy, but it says, now, if I do what I don't want to do, then I consent. There's something there. But then it is no longer I that does it, but shame that dwells in me. Shame is the force. Shame is the cycle that comes with patterns, and it creates a behavior.
So I can hear people asking right now, what do I do to break out of the cycle, the shame cycle? How do I step outside of that cycle?
Well, let's just go with St. Paul, shall we? He's a pretty smart guy. He wrote 2/3 of the Bible. He said, I see a law, or I see a principle working in my mind. He said, I am a wretched man, but how am I going to get delivered from this dilemma? And he said, it's going to be by the grace of God. It's going to be by the grace. And I think grace is like our religious self wants to do. Okay, let's just talk about fathers and sons. Like, you get angry with them and they're hurt. They don't understand. And so then you want to overcompensate and do fishing trip or do something. But like I said, whatever level of just pain you cause, your good deeds will never match that.
Right.
You think it will, but it won't. But grace allows us to look at what we've done and how we're acting and how it's affecting people around us. Religion says just keep doing good. Do something good, you'll fix it.
Right. So it's like trying to fix sin. Like in the old religious days, it was through abstinence.
Mm-hmm.
Like you just choose not to do it. Like you just choose not to partake. But when you think of it from a shame perspective, Paul said shame is in him.
Mm-hmm.
He said the shame that's inside of him. So it's coming to a place of grace that says, because shame, we go back to what you said earlier. Shame says we're the screw up. There's something wrong with me. And so grace says, no, there's nothing wrong with you. It's you. Yeah, we need to learn from this, but there's nothing wrong with you. That's what grace says. Grace says it's okay to learn from it and move on. That's one of the things, we were talking earlier. I always ask a question, and I've had this question asked to me, is if you could remove the shame and you could remove all the sin words and the shame words from whatever it is, let's say you got angry and lashed out. What did you learn from that?
Yeah.
And the hope is when you ask yourself that question, you get to that next level of emotions of saying, well, what I learned was that I was really kind of like fearful about losing my job, or something happened at work, somebody really offended me, or I've just never dealt with this feeling of abandonment, or whatever the case may be. Typically, it's pretty deep rooted, to be honest with you, Mark. This isn't surface level stuff. It's pretty deep. That's why it's so hard to change, because a lot of times we got to peel the onion back, and it just takes a while to do that. But like, that's a good place to start, is if I could remove the shame, what did I learn from what just happened? Mark, you were talking about Paul and grace, and what kind of came to my mind was the fact that he persecuted the Christians. So if anybody understood shame, like, I would think it would be Paul. Like, can you expound on that and like get into his mind and how it relates to us?
Well, I think about it a lot. I think that the $10 million question with shame is when you get trapped by the cycle. Like, I believe a cycle comes with patterns, and patterns create behaviors, which are attitudes and emotions. And I think about, I would imagine Paul probably told to himself, how could I have done this? How could I have been in this trap? But again, it wasn't his fault. He was trained by the Pharisees of the Pharisees. He did exactly what was supposed to have been done. He was the cream of the crop. He was a Harvard grad of Christianity at the time. But it turned sour. But what I love about Paul is because of all his, that had to create a massive amount of shame. But he turned into a champion of grace. And he's the number one writer of grace. And we wouldn't understand grace today without Paul, but we wouldn't have had grace if he had not lived through the shame of what he had done to people that he loved. And so there's hope for all of us. There's a reason. My theory in life is God's in all things. So there's nothing that's not redeemable, Toby. There's nothing. It's a matter of owning, and you just have to let grace have its way, really, in life. You kind of have to give up and just say, I can't conquer this. I mean, Romans 7 says that. I want to do good, but I can't. And that I don't want to do, I end up doing. That sounds like every person I know in my life, if you be honest.
But at the same time, Paul was successful in identifying that the real him wasn't who was quote unquote sinning.
Yes.
It wasn't the real him that was doing the things that he didn't want to do. It was the shame in him. So he was constantly living this life of understanding grace at a deeper level. Understand, like you said, I mean, the fact that he was killing Christians and he's ministering to these same people he used to kill, the shame, the opportunity for shame had to be overwhelming. And the only way he got through that was through grace. So I guess my question to you is, how do we apply that principle, or at least for this podcast, like how do we just start to understand the principle? Because what we don't want people to do is walk away with guilt and shame about their actions. We want them to know there's a different way, a better way. And maybe a wife is listening to this and saying, wow, maybe there's something going on in my husband I didn't realize.
Mm-hmm.
And but these are hard things to identify. But what is this kind of the first few steps, or maybe they're not steps, but awareness of just kind of stepping outside of the cycle?
What we talked about is shame is shame says I am a screw up. But grace has a message to it. Grace has a power to it that says you're not. You're accepted. That's not who you are. In Romans 7, Paul says, if I do what I don't want to do, then it's shame in me, not grace. It's not me. He literally said it's not me doing it. And the level of shame that he must have lived in, but somehow he was a champion of grace. He actually wrote in the scriptures that grace has taught me not to sin, but in our world, it would be grace has taught me to not live in shame.
And what does a life look like that's not living in shame?
It's just being present. It's being completely aware. It's being in control of your spirit. Proverbs talks about an angry man has no control over his spirit. He's like a city broken down and walls that are broken down. He has no real defenses. He has no real respect. He has no nothing. And I think when you have awareness and you know you can get angry. I mean, let's just be honest. You can get angry out of your own expectations. It doesn't mean you have miles of trauma in your life.
Right.
But a wise man and a disciplined man and someone that loves his family or people more will keep his spirit in subjection to him. But even Jesus said, I think it was Jesus said, well, be angry and sin not. Be angry and don't cause shame, or don't blow up, and don't let the sun go down on your wrath. So we're not talking about the normal frustration, but we all react differently, you know. Like we're babysitting a cat, and I thought we haven't seen him in a day and a half, and I was up all night thinking, oh my God, I dumped the trash last night and let him out, and I'm horrified because I'm an animal person, and I was already bracing myself for the repercussions of that, you know. So we're not talking about only the past traumatic things that we went through. We're just talking about everyday life. You have to get control of it.
Mm-hmm.
When you walk in grace, first of all teaches you you're not what you do. You're not the sum total of what you've been through. Grace will teach you that you're way above this, and it'll help you live at a higher level.
So let me say this back to you and see if I'm hearing you right. Shame and grace are opposing forces.
Sounds right.
We will live in one or the other because they're opposition of each other.
Wow.
Because life is we're not going to be perfect. Life is going to bring challenges. We strive to do things the right way. But in our imperfections, as we're going through a renewal of our minds, but as in our imperfections, grace and shame are opposing forces. And the question is, which one do we believe? Because they both have a voice.
Well, I used to be like, I started a church in Detroit, and we're radical anyway. You know me, we're radical. And I used to tell them, I use this Romans 7 a lot throughout my life. And I would tell them, if you're out there smoking in front of the church, I just tell them, I'm smoking, but this ain't me. It's not who I am. If you keep pressing into that, this is not who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And I got a novel idea. Instead of trying to do good to undo what you did, the most important thing you could do was own it and share it with the person that you blew up on.
Right.
And say, I own this and I see this, and I'm incredibly sorry about what happened and where I'm at. It's not where I want to be. I tell people all the time, you may not be where you want to be, but hopefully you're not where you used to be.
And I think also to forgive yourself after you do that, because you've got to let go of it.
Do we?
No, we got to let go of it. And
but
then
that keeps
let
us
go.
in the shame cycle. Won't you talk
Exactly.
about that before we go? Like, you get in the anger thing, and then you're spun right. I feel my vision is like you're just thrown right in the washing machine cycle and it's spinning again.
Yeah. It's a powerful force. I mean, that's kind of what we're talking about. Shame is an incredibly powerful voice inside of us. It's telling us all the things about who we are. And sometimes it comes in a third party voice. Like if you had a influential person or parent that shamed you as a child, said you'd never amount. I've met many, many men said, yeah, my parents, my dad, whoever said I'd never be successful in life, or I'd always be a screw up. I never was going to make it. And those voices are still like when they screw up, that's what they hear is that parent's voice, but it still comes in the form of shame. It has so much power. And that's why grace, just having grace, obviously from God, but grace towards yourself and saying, you know what, I can learn from this, but I don't have to live here. I can learn from it and I can move on, because the only way to move on is to step outside of the cycle. I can't step outside of the cycle without self-forgiveness, without reflection. I think great idea, great instruction. If it was towards someone, call it out, own it, speak it out. But Mark, we got it. Like maybe this is a good place to end here. Somehow we have to get to those primary emotions and past that secondary feeling of just the anger, because that's just a surface emotion. What are can you think of any like tools or hints of how we could internalize certain questions to ourselves that would cause us to think about what's really behind this? What's really driving this?
Yeah, you said something last week that really just stuck with me. Like, you might want to contemplate where you learned this from, because it's either nature or nurture, and I don't believe people are born angry. I think they're nurtured into it through an experience of trauma, or it was modeled to them. It's obviously a very selfish emotion because you control the environment, you control everything.
All right.
But I think you said last week we should reflect and write down, because you said, that the anger is really based in what I'm in, my fear, my hurt, or my shame. So I think today we should just focus on one point. And the one point should be, why do I feel this shame? I'm ashamed of, because we know shame is there's shame also said, not only does it say you're a screw up, it also says if people knew who you really were, they would not be your friend. They
Right.
would disown you. They would reject you. So begin to journal and write down what is the shame storm? What's the source of it? I'm ashamed of, and I think that's part of the owning it, don't you?
Yeah, and maybe another way to say it too is when you're in that feeling, like the aftermath, you're not going to feel good about yourself. I mean, it's just, we've all been there.
Mhm.
So you like can journal, say, I feel this about myself. And then you could write underneath there, who told me that's who I was?
Mhm.
Like, because shame is going to speak negatively about you.
Mhm.
And it's okay to acknowledge that voice is there. And maybe put words to that voice, but then say, who told me I was that way?
God's been asking Adam the same question for thousands of years. Who told you were naked? And he couldn't answer it.
Yeah.
And we may not can answer the question of who told us, but we should be able to say, what is he saying? What is it saying?
Yeah.
What is happening in that moment? And I think if you can pause and reflect, I'm like you. I mean, there's not a man on the planet that hadn't acted out of character and then just felt like the worst person in the world.
Yeah. No doubt. No
But
doubt.
I do, you know, we talked a couple weeks ago about having a 911 friend. And that's really our dilemma here.
Right.
We should be able to, in that moment, have a 911 friend. You just text them and say 911, and they know no matter what they're doing, they call you, and you just say, I just had a horrible episode.
Yep.
It's not what I intended. I misinterpreted, and I got out of hand, and this is how I feel.
Right.
So that's part of it. Just journal it and say, what am I feeling right now? Why do I feel this way? And basically, you have to decide, do you want to keep doing this the rest of your life? Here's what I tell people. You can always go back. You might as well change it because it's not going to change on its own.
No. No, and I know, Mark, as we kind of wrap up here, we're just talking on a podcast, and there's so many tools and experiences that we use in a Breaking Biscuits event that deal with these types of things. And there's just no way to duplicate that through a podcast. We've been there, we've seen it. And so we just want to encourage everybody. Well, we're real close to setting a date. It will be in January for sure. But, we're going to formally invite everybody, and we'll have room for 5 couples. But these are the topics that we dig into in a different format, a different way, obviously. And we can get there a lot quicker in person than we can on a podcast, and we can bring real healing to some of the trauma that people have gone through. But I want to say this because I felt compelled to say it earlier, and I kind of paused, but I really feel compelled to just speak it out of my mouth, because you kind of mentioned the fact that a lot of trauma and shame can come through being sexually abused and sexual, I'll call it sexual shame.
Mm-hmm.
As a child, with the internet age, we've got sexuality online. It's just everywhere. It's in media everywhere, social media everywhere, and in my I won't say travels, but in people that open up to me, which is a number of people, it's amazing to me how common sexual abuse is the root of shame and troubles in an adult's life. And it was in my own family, and it's just crazy. Um, and so I just want to acknowledge that that's a real thing. And not only is it a real thing, but it's an epidemic in our society. And then you throw pornography and all the other opportunities to live in a shame storm as it relates to a man's sexuality and a woman's sexuality. And if you're a Christian, it cuts across your moral fiber. So you're dealing with this. I felt as from a moral standpoint, and then what other failures you're dealing with, and if there's past sexual abuse, you got that layered on top of it. It just can become a very, very complex issue. But the healing and all that is no different. It still comes down to identifying what those feelings are and accepting grace for your life and realizing that. Because I can't help it when someone is sexually abused as a child, think about this, Mark, they always become the victim when they're an adult. And what I mean by that is they are the victim, but in their mind, they did something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Like they carry the shame of someone else's actions. And so they think something's wrong with them, even though they were the innocent, victimized child. They carry the shame. Something must be wrong with me to attract a grown man to do that to me, or something must have been wrong with me as a little boy to attract sexual attention. No, there's nothing wrong with you. We have perversion in our world, and unfortunately, it's at epidemic levels.
And maybe the actions of a horrible father or a abusive father that actually was modeled to him.
They have a story too. You just don't know what's behind it.
Living in that effect of that is the message of shame is it's all your fault. You could have fixed it. If you had only done this, if you'd only done that. And when you just said that, what I realized, Grace has a message. And the message is, it's not your fault. I already took care of it.
That's good.
I already took care of it. It's not your fault. That's your only way out, is to realize I didn't deserve this. I had no control over it, and it's not my fault. I think we struggle with what we become because of what we went through. But that's the process of the discovery and the journey. Mm-hmm. But grace has to be the underlying theme that says it's not really you. I tell people this all the time, and I want to leave with this thought. Give yourself the grace that you give to the person who would tell you their story, even if it was exactly like yours.
Yeah.
We don't do that.
No.
Give yourself the same, like if I came to you and said a story, you'd give me all the grace in the world and go, well, that's not your fault. It's clearly, and you would show me all the reasons and tell me, you'd give me grace. But if you were in the same boat as me, you wouldn't do that to yourself. Because shame will not allow you to accept the grace.
Because shame is a feeling.
Yeah.
It's a feeling, and the feeling lies to us.
Yes.
That we're not good enough, or there's something wrong with us. It's a feeling. And feelings are real, don't get me wrong. But man, you've got to discern the source of where they're coming from. And grace, grace to me is I don't know if this is biblically correct, but to me, grace is a feeling as well. Because grace says I'm good enough, that it doesn't matter, in the sense that it holds no account. And
it was here before I was.
It was, yeah.
It knew every detail of my life.
So
it
it's
was
a feeling
ready to hold me.
Yeah, exactly. Of comfort, uh, forgiveness, restoration. I mean, all those words that reset us to live the life that we need to live and want to live. So it's this super deep subject, Mark, and lots of layers, and we've talked about a lot of different things in our short time together. But we just want to acknowledge these things exist and that there's hope. We don't have to live in a shame cycle anymore. There's hope for all of us. Closing thoughts and comments.
St. Paul was a champion of grace, and what he learned was it was my only way out. I could not have forgiven myself if I didn't have the grace working in me. He literally said, I am what I am by the grace of God. All the good you see in me is because of the grace of God. Because I don't deserve it, and I could never earn it. But God somehow walked me through it.
Yeah.
I think my closing thought would be, when you realize we're all in the same boat, your life will get way better. You'll fight for yourself. You'll realize we're all in the same boat. And that's what Breaking Biscuits does.
Yeah, it does. Shame wants to isolate us. Grace brings us together.
It does.
Grace is understanding. All right. Well, I guess, Mark, until next time, I guess we'll stay with this subject. We didn't even get to our other 2 points.
No.
We'll try to hit those, maybe one of those next week. But this is super important.
Be sure to like and share and comments. Like, I get text messages and comments all the time, but it'd be really cool if you would text on here and say, wow, that spoke to me, or I'm going to share it with so and so.
Yeah, it's a great point. We're here to help, and we're here to bring nuggets of truth. So if we speak something out that speaks to your heart, let us know, and encourages us to continue to dig deep into ourselves, because we're not like we're not sharing from a perspective of some distant observer. Like, we have lived this more than you even know, and so we're speaking from years of experience and years, in some cases, years of struggle, but there's hope and there's a way out, and grace is the way.
It is. Till next time, man. Let's do it. Spread the love.
Yep. God bless.